of the Field of 68 Best Bets show presented by Three Man Weave and our fine sponsor, BetRivers. Matthew Cox, adorned in all black, not Black Friday, the Black Friday after Black Friday, I suppose. Jim, you got the memo. Kai did not. You looked the most jovial of us three this morning. Jim with the new background as he dog sits at a nearby undisclosed location. Going to Mr. McKeon first. Just opening thoughts, how you feeling, what you learned last night, anything you want to get off your chest, personal corner as well. Happy to hear it.
Well, heck, Matt, happy Friday to you. It's Friday. Yeah, feeling good. Tomorrow there's 93 line games, so excited to dive into those. Yeah, real excited. Takeaways yesterday, UConn continues to be amazing. No Portland hangover for them. Just dominate Oklahoma State. Sonogo had a pretty funny quote. It was like, they thought they had a chance. They didn't. They did not. I love to hear that. UConn is a juggernaut. Everyone's aware. And how about Creighton too? Kudos to them for keeping that game close with Texas, despite shooting 4 for 27 from three. They were 1 for 22 at one point and still in the game. That showed me a lot from Creighton. So I think the Jays are very much a Final Four contender this year, Jim.
Yeah, they sure looked it for a team that shot terribly and hung around at Texas. Rather impressive. Texas offense was decent, I guess. I'll give them half credit, partial credit on that. My takeaways, Matt, are Utes. Oh boy, they took care of business, kind of demolished Arizona. Whether you want to call it Maui hangover or not, that's up to you. Maybe the Utes are just good. I know they lost at home to Sam Houston State.
They are.
That's okay. Sam Houston State's really good too. They're undefeated, or maybe still undefeated, but they have 2 power conference road wins. It's not like that was a total fluke. So yeah, the Utes, I'm very impressed with them and probably going to be riding with them frequently going forward, although that result is going to start skewing their lines.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping they win by like a more narrow margin because, yeah, they'll shoot up in every analytic rankings repository, and thus the market will react as such. Yeah, that was my takeaway, Jim. The Utes, really good team. Craig Smith, happy for him. And yeah, the Maui hangover, I think, continues to have some real legs, but we'll holster that. Let's move forward. We got some big time action tonight on a Friday. Shout out to the Big Ten for moving their schedule to the Friday, Sunday slots. We actually get some good games to talk about, but headlining tonight, Jimbo, Gonzaga Baylor. Rematch of the 2021 title game. This line opened Gonzaga -2. I think it's sitting at 2.5 right now. I'll be honest, I thought it was a little bit high. I know the Baylor and Gonzaga, everyone's kind of selling both teams to various degrees. I thought it'd be closer to pick, so I was surprised to see the Zags favored. What are your thoughts?
The Baylor stinks right now. That's kind of my opinion. Pretty disappointed with them. I think they've been awful to start the year. They've blown out a couple bad teams at home. That's about it. I thought their efforts in Vegas were poor, and the effort at Marquette was even worse, like terrible. Their guards were just handing the ball to Marquette. I know the Golden Eagles are good as a dog and really pressure, but I think Baylor's got some serious issues. And I think I've said this once, I'll say it a million times. To beat Gonzaga, you have to force them to play in the half court. You got to slow them down, make them execute. And I don't really think Baylor's going to do that. I think they're going to run with them. They're going to want transition threes. And I don't see that boding well for them. So I lean towards the Zags here. I did not bet it because my number is still a little bit favors towards Baylor. I haven't knocked them as much as my eye test says I should, but I'm not confident in my Baylor rating, so I'm staying away.
Yeah, neither team nearly as dominant, right, in years past, and that's been apparent this season. But I think Baylor might be a little undervalued actually right now. That loss to Marquette, a very tough home court, a very tough underdog. Dropped them 8 spots in KenPom from 8 to 16. That's pretty big. That's certainly going to affect their analytical standpoint. Now, I've seen Gonzaga live. I think Gonzaga is really good. I think Gonzaga is also a little bit underrated. This game in the Palestra will probably, the Pentagon will probably mostly Zags fans. I doubt Baylor travels nearly as well as the Zags tonight, but I think Baylor can hang. It's the 2 best offenses in the country. Both teams have struggled defensively. Matt, the over is kind of the obvious play here. It's a huge total, over 160 right now.
It's been bet down. Does that surprise you? 164 is what it opens down to 161. It does
surprise me a little bit. They opened it so high, though. I mean,
yeah, I know. It was like a little too high.
Yeah, but I can't see how this isn't super efficient. I don't think Baylor can stop Timmy, but I think Baylor has the edge still on guard play. And hey, Scott Drew, I trust the guy. I think he'll scheme up something here. I mean, they did handle Gonzaga in the championship. That was a couple of years ago, but I think plus 2.5 is worth a Baylor lean for me.
Yeah, the only angle I'll add is you mentioned, you alluded to it, just the rematch factor from 2 years ago. Like, it's maybe cliche, but the fact that Drew Timme and Antoine Watson and Mark Few, like, I think that bothered that team. Like, they were that close, and then to get stomped, I think there's a little bit of revenge in the minds of the Zags, and they're definitely going to walk into a pretty feeble opponent relative to what we thought Baylor would be. So I have no appetite to get in the way of what could be another Baylor stinker, feels like tonight. Let's get some some conference play. We got 2 next up on the rundown here. Illinois, Maryland. Kai, we're going to you first. Maryland, awesome. Illinois, awesome. I mean, there's really nothing to say about both teams. They continue to shatter expectations game in, game out. Line is interestingly short, would you say? Maryland favored. Surprise you?
They should be favored. They were favored by more. I agree. Got that down, actually. Big Ten home court, anecdotally pretty strong. I who knows if it's strong this year. Every year is different, and maybe trends don't really matter that much. But I think Big Ten on the whole, their home courts are good. Maryland's a tough place to play. They've also done everything right this year. They're 6-1 against the spread with over an 8-point cover margin. I mean, they've been awesome. And that I'm eating my words a little bit from the preseason because I was a little bit down on this team. Illinois look great as well, but it's their first year road game. And this is a very, very young team, very young. The experience difference here between Maryland and Illinois, it's huge. And I'm not looking to get in front of the Terps. In fact, I'm looking to back them. It is my best bet. Maryland -1.5. I'm trusting Kevin Willard today to get it done.
I think they barely trailed in any game this year, Kai. So you're probably
not sure they have
at least boarding a train that's been unstoppable so far. Illinois, they are young because they play a ton of freshmen, but they have some experience with them. Shannon's obviously been through some wars. Meyer's been through some wars. Of course, those guys don't play a ton. Meyer doesn't play a ton, doesn't play as much as we expected coming into the year. But I like Maryland too here as well. I'm very in on Big Ten home court and home court in general. It's been super strong this year relative to past years. And I think with the way Maryland is playing, you can be confident in that home court playing up. So I'm with you. I would side with you on the Terps.
My only concern from a Maryland lens is they haven't played any close games because they've just been so good. Like Illinois at least got 2 tests in the Vegas MT, 2 dogfights. I think execution late game, if this game is close, even though Illinois is on the road, I think they're going to be a little sharper in that spot. Maryland's a team that doesn't really have a clear-cut star, so it's not like their end of game high leverage execution is set in stone. A minor nitpick to this handicap, but I do think it's a pretty sharp line, and I think the game plays pretty close to a pick, honestly. I just think Illinois is a slightly better team, but the home court juice plays in Maryland's favor. I think we get a good one. Feed up popcorn.
You're faulting the Terps for not playing a close game? They killed Miami and SLU.
I'm not faulting them. I'm just saying if this game is a close game down the stretch, they have not played in one. Illinois has. I think that will favor Illinois in a very slight degree.
Played in like another one.
Yeah, they've been in one. They've dealt that scenario.
They lost.
Yeah, they did lose though. But yeah, no play for me. Put your gloves down. Put your mitts down. I'm not fighting with you this morning. It's too early. Number 4 on the outline, going to Jimbo because I'm mad at Kai right now. Clemson hosting Wake Forest. Conference game. I'll give Kai some credit here, unfortunately. He did find a very good stat, Jimbo, talking about Brad Brownell's dominance over Wake Forest historically. Mm-hmm. Does that mean anything at all to you in this context?
One matchup matters to me. That's last year when Clemson, it was Steve Forbes with a decent team and Clemson still won. I don't care about the Danny Manning years. I think everybody owns Danny Manning. And then the year before was Steve Forbes, like kind of trying to figure it out, had a complete bare bones roster. I think everybody picked them like 14th or 15th in the ACC that year. This team's a lot tougher. I've been really impressed with them. The road win at Wisconsin, my boy Cam Hildreth, the redhead British man, has made some huge plays for them. He's a really physical defender. He will take guards driving to his chest and swipe down and get some steals. I don't know if Clemson is fully formed. Like the game they played against Penn State was so back and forth. They kind of choked it away late. I don't know. I trust Forbes a little more. I get that Brownell's had a great record against Wake, but like I said, I only buy last year's meeting as having a lot of meaning to it, and that's a pretty small sample size. So I'm going with Wake here. Tyree Appleby's given them the newfound Alondas Williams treatment, like not quite triple double, but his numbers are like eye popping.
Yeah.
So I'm leaning towards Wake here, especially if you can get a 3.5, the extra, the full possession, but not strong enough to bet it here. Not my best bet today, Kai.
Yeah, Wake's off that huge Wisconsin game, so everyone probably thinking let down here. Clemson, though, is getting healthier as well. PJ Hall, right, looked pretty good in that overtime against Penn State. Those stats, by the way, Matt, that you alluded to, Brad Brownell versus Wake, 13-2 under Brownell against Wake Forest, 9-0 at home, 2-0 against Forbes, as Jim mentioned. Last year, they beat him by 11. Is there something to that? Probably not a whole lot given the change in coaches at Wake and how that program's been during that span, but it might be something, might be a little more confidence factor in Brownell. Who knows? I do lean Clemson here. It's a really tough home floor. I do want to shout out Appleby, though, for Wake Forest. He's been immense this season. A really, really good player thus far.
You mentioned the letdown spot. You could argue Clemson, same boat off the double OT win, and that game was on Tuesday. I do worry about PJ Hall. He kind of alluded to in the post-game presser, like, he's as good as he's felt so far this year, but after playing, how many minutes did he play in that double OT game? Like, I got to think he's a little bit sore, short turnaround, a guy who's been like chronically injured his whole career. So, and he's critical for that team, like almost as important defensively as he is on offense. And he's a unicorn on offense. So something to watch. Another ACC showdown as we continue through the rundown. Kai, going to you, the Wolfpack will be hosting, can I say my Pitt Panthers after I've backed them twice this year and covered, but okay, I won't, because I don't need to join the Pitt Panther bandwagon.
Do you want that moniker?
No, but it was a fun ride, Jim, here in Chicago when they put Northwestern in the Hurt Locker. And that's even putting it lightly, not even close. Obviously, when you make 14 of 22 from the land of plenty, you're going to beat a lot of good teams. But Kai, I got a sneaky little hunch that this Pitt team's a little bit underrated right now.
Yeah, they're clearly not as bad as they seemed early on. The early games where they had some guys in and out of the lineup. We were ready to not trust Jeff Capel at all. I still do not. But they are 4-3 against the spread. There's obvious talent on this roster. We always said this roster was talented. I think I even have in my notes from the preseason, if it was a different coach, I would rank them a lot higher. Same with Georgetown, really. But NC State's been excellent, man. I'm not really looking to fade this team currently. They're 5-2 against the spread. They're scoring at a really high level, playing up tempo. Morcell has turned into a real asset for them. And him plus Joyner plus Terquavian Smith, that's one of the best backcourts in the country right now. And it's nice to finally have an NC State team back on the upswing after we were such big fans of Kevin Keatts at Wilmington. He's kind of struggled so far. So I don't know. Spread's a little high for me to endorse NC State, Jim, but I'm wary of fading them currently.
Yeah, my number's a lot closer to saying bet Pitt, but I'm not going to do that. And my gut says NC State. Their backcourt is lethal. Like you said, Joyner's, I think he was the MVP of that tournament, or I guess their MVP of the tournament down in Atlantis. And we caught them on the one like really egg they laid, Kai, when we backed them against Elon. It's a bummer.
Right, exactly.
But they hung around with Kansas. They beat Dayton. I mean, they kind of rolled Dayton. They rolled Butler. I've been really, really impressed with them. And it's the kind of team you want to back as a favorite, because there's going to be a decent amount of possessions. They'll get up and down a little bit. Pitt's been trying to slow teams down, but they're coming off that Northwestern game. I don't really like Northwestern's guards, and now they're having to step up big in guard competition. I think NC State will be able to control the tempo a little bit more here, and I see a little bit of a letdown effort from Pitt. I'm selling high off that outing, Matthew.
I'm not going to buy more stock in Pitt, but I'll continue to hold my shares. I'm on Pitt here. I got 9.5, 10. It's still pretty much 9.5, 10. Everywhere you look. NC State's been awesome. I've watched them play a few times. Everything you guys said is valid. But I just think you look at the rosters pound for pound. Now that they're both pretty much fully healthy. I mean, Cummings, Savandi, Burden. I think this is a really underrated Pitt backcourt. And I think with Hughley getting more and more healthy, they're actually sharing the ball. Like the way they move the ball is somewhat impressive. It's not just ISO, stand around, my turn, your turn. And with Big John in the middle, sort of healthy now, he at least draws attention, kickouts for threes. I just like a lot working in the Panthers' favor. So famous last words as I confidently back Jeff Capel and the Panthers. But that's where I am tonight.
One note on that, Matt, the Pitt fan forum is pretty funny. They are ragging on Hughley the entire year. They talking about how bad he is.
His effort's a little bit hit or miss. I will admit that, but just him being out there helps. Like he had a goose egg last game against Northwestern, but when he's in the game, you have to account for him, and I think he makes everything.
I thought it was funny. I love fans.
Yeah, I do too. Fan forums are the best. Mm-hmm. Chat mob round 1. Who is czarring? I don't think I even asked pre-show. I apologize.
We didn't establish it, but we can go through the
yeah. I was starting to try, but I am in a
by committee czarring
foreign space here, so I don't have multiple screens. It's a real mess right now. I will not be doing the show from this location again. I'm furious. I know that Kai. We can start with Boston at Merrimack. Was asked by Scott H.
Start with that.
I lean towards Boston because Merrimack is a shambles without Jordan Minor.
Yep, got it at a lower number, -5 now. I'd still take it if Jordan Minor's out. If he's out, I think you still go Boston. But let's not ignore how bad Boston's been. And the one thing that scares me, they're really bad against a zone. And Merrimack plays a very good zone. So that's my one concern, but Boston should handle business.
Yeah, Merrimack hasn't had like a single good effort since Minor went out.
Right.
So that's my fear. Another one, App State at Charlotte, Matthew. I was kind of leaning towards the road dog here. Charlotte's coming off a big overtime win against a huge rival in Davidson. App State, I think, is feisty. Slow it down. What do you think?
Yeah, I was torn. I mean, yeah, off the huge emotional win. Charlotte did win at App State last year. Like, they almost blew a huge lead.
They play every year, I think.
They play, it's
a fun little rivalry.
Pseudo rivalry. Yeah. But yeah, no play for me. I think the line at 6.5, 7 is pretty sharp. So nothing.
Let's see. We got South Dakota State. Kent State's on the outline. Canisius at Siena is on the outline. Campbell at East Carolina. Kai, Campbell's actually been sneaky solid in East Carolina. We saw crash down to earth with a home loss to South Carolina State last game.
Yeah, I was looking to back ECU, assuming Jesus Carolero is still out for Campbell. I can't find a thing on that guy, so I stayed away. If he's out, plus Devin Dunn, who both were missing last game, I would lean towards ECU, but couldn't find anything passing.
Campbell is remarkably poorly covered from my historical research. Matt, what about Kennesaw State at Mercer? Big in-state battle here in the mid-major powers of Georgia.
Yeah, I liked Mercer. I thought it was a little too short. I know Kennesaw is good and talented and improved, but I think Mercer's the right side here if you have to get involved, but I am not officially, just for the record.
Yeah, I kind of lean Kennesaw. Mercer's still a little short-handed. I'm not sure exactly when Glisson will be back. He should be sometime soon, but man, Kennesaw, they're feisty. We'll see about that one. Let's see what else we got here. Harvard, we got Harvard, Kai. We got the Crimson hosting your UMass Minutemen. What do you think?
I like UMass here. Actually, this one's on the line at the outline, so we can skip it.
Man, I wish I had a second screen. I'm about to throw 800 pieces of technology through a window.
Let's get back to the outline, Jim. I'll take it back. I'll take it back. Let's get back to some structure here. Because this game's actually really fun. This is probably my most excited game I'm most excited for on the outline. Kent State hosting South Dakota State, kind of mid-major special. The Golden Flashes made Houston look mortal, which I thought was nearly impossible. Just a really well-coached, big, physical, and now kind of pressure centric type of team. Just an awesome defense balance. Rob Senderov's the man. Hosting the Jack Bunnies and, established mid-major brand who have a gruesome travel plans for the next 48 hours. They'll be going to Alabama on a back-to-back tomorrow. Does that play into your handicaps night of this game?
No, not for South Dakota State's back-to-back travel. I don't think they're looking ahead because Kent State's awesome. They're one of the best ATS teams in the country. You mentioned they hung with Houston. Houston had the flu. I don't care. You hang with Houston in any state, you hang with Houston and you're really good. South Dakota State struggled recently too. I still think they're a bit underrated. They've played a brutal schedule. Like Matt said, they go to Alabama tomorrow. It's kind of nuts what Eric Henderson's doing, but I kind of respect it at the same time. They've beaten Boise, they've beaten Bonnie's, they've beaten Vanderbilt on neutral. They're not a pushover by any means. I thought 7 points was a bit too many. And as someone pointed in the chat, though, my one worry, Jim, is the turnover battle here. Kent State 4th in the country in turnover rate forced. South Dakota State 358th in turnovers given up, turnover rate. That's yikes. I'm looking for their offense to wake up a bit here. I'm leaning towards +7.
Yeah, the offense is nowhere near what it was. And look how good Baylor Shireman's been for Creighton. Maybe he was a really huge part of that. They're not making threes at anywhere near the clip they did last year. I think they're like a full 10% below their nation leading pace. And I am just buying all Kent State right now. I think that team is fantastic. Matt, I might even fade Toledo when Kent State plays them. How about that?
That worked out last year. It's a bad matchup. I agree with for Toledo.
I might back the Golden Flashes. That's how impressed I am with them. So I stayed away like Kai. I was surprised at how high the number was, just based on these two programs. But man, Kent State has impressed me enough that I'm not in any hurry to fade them right now.
Yeah, the thing with Kent State is their defensive pressure with Carey and Jacobs, two ball hawks, along with their athletic wings. That South Dakota State has been bothered by pressure. So if Kent State and Senderov decide to dial it up, I think that will be the right play. I think that's how you kind of take South Dakota State out of their comfort zone. Zeke Mayo, talented guard, but erratic and sloppy with the rock sometimes. I think you can kind of pick on him as SFA did earlier this year.
He's not a point guard. That's the problem.
He's not a point guard. Right, exactly. They don't really have one. They do miss Baylor, who is obviously killing it right now for Creighton. All right, next up, the Minutemen, Harvard versus the Minutemen, Mr. McKeon. Game is hovering around to pick 'em, slight edge toward UMass right now in the current markets. They're laying 1.5, 2. It's about what it should be. My gut was screaming UMass because I just don't really trust Harvard. I don't trust UMass at all, but I just think they're the better team. Thoughts?
I think there are too. Harvard's been kind of bad. They're a really tough team to figure out. They have a lot of weird efforts. It took them a while to get away from Holy Cross in the first half yesterday, or whatever, 2 days ago. Holy Cross is terrible. They were without their best player. They won by 40, Harvard did, but it's still strange efforts from them. I don't trust them. And UMass, hey, despite how ugly they play, they continue to win. They continue to cover. They're currently 10th in luck in KenPom. There is something to that if you watch their games. They also, Jim, have a +2 cover margin on a 4-1 ATS record. So it's probably a little bit, ooh, we barely covered, but no travel here. Harvard's not looking great. I lean towards UMass.
Yeah, they've been really good in close games. I think that's a part of it. They've had a couple big shots. Your boy Noah Fernandez at the Myrtle Beach Invitational hit a big one for you. So I've been impressed with UMass results. Eye test, like we said, a little bit more frustrating, but Harvard is results frustrating and eye test frustrating. Like I don't get excited when I watch them. I watched them at Fordham, was backing them there, and they do some dumb things, man. Unsurprisingly, Matt, it's that Coach K coaching tree. So many of their teams are just careless. This was a stay away from me. Two teams I don't really trust right now.
Shouts to King D Sports Betting. Road team is 5-2-1 ATS in this matchup, which I totally buy. Basically, no home going from Amherst to Cambridge. Or
I don't understand the 3-7 ATS on Friday. What's the sample size there? They've played 8 games this year. They play Friday every year.
Maybe last year. Unclear. We'll move forward until we get more context on that trend. Jim, it's time for MAAC. MAAC, we got a twofer. I know it's always a fun league to bet. Actually, it's not. It's a terrible league to bet. No one knows what's going to happen. In general, when in doubt, just bet the dog. That's kind of as simple as it gets, except when you're playing Iona, and that's who we're going to start with. Iona hosting Niagara, the Fighting Greg Paulus's. I thought the line was kind of high. I think Greg Paulus is pretty good as a dog. He's feisty, but man, the talent gap is pretty seismic here. So I didn't take it.
Yeah, it's enormous, the talent gap, but I think the line's too big too. Niagara's playing the second slowest offensive pace in the country. They are desperately trying to shorten games because they don't have a lot of depth. They don't have a ton of talent. They don't have a ton of size. They're like, let's just mellow this game down. And hopefully there's so few possessions that we can be in it at the end and make a play or two. And that's kind of worked for them. Over in London, they swept Central Arkansas and Stetson. Rather impressive. They kept the St. John's game close. Granted, there was no Posh in that game. But I've been pretty impressed so far with Niagara and their ability to kind of muck things up and play successfully in the muck. So I would lean towards the dog here, as Matt said. It should be gut instinct with games in the Metro Atlantic.
Yeah, I think it's a huge spread for a conference game here. But the only problem is Iona tends to be a little bit of an exception to that rule. I did look back, though, at Iona. They only won 7 MAAC games last year by double digits.
Yeah, that's true. Last year they actually weren't as dominant as I thought.
That feels a bit low. They're 17-3 in the conference. You would expect there to be a little bit more than that. They killed Niagara last year, but they also lost to them. Iona's also only played 4 games this year, just 4 games. That's kind of their usual schedule with how their semesters, I think, are set up at the school. So perhaps they're not as seasoned, we'll say, as Niagara. And like Jim said, Paulus really slows the tempo. He's holding the ball purposely, making the games low possession. It's pretty key against Iona, a team that really likes to run. It's a talent mismatch. Iona clearly covers Niagara there from a talent perspective, but that gamesmanship, Matt, might be enough to cover. I do lean towards Niagara.
Yeah, the tempo thing that Jim mentioned is huge. Like, I just think I look at this conference historically, anecdotally, the slowish tempo and especially low efficiency. It's never a good offensive efficiency league. I think it just plays well for dogs, right? Lower scoring games, you get higher variance. Teams that shouldn't compete tend to compete. So, and also home court is basically nothing in this conference. Every trip's a bus ride away, basically. Next game, Siena Canisius. A longer travel for the Buffalo-based Golden Griffins coming to Albany, upstate New York travel there. Jim, the Saints have been good this year. I kind of kicked myself for not running back the When the Saints Go Marching In campaign that I was the chief of last year. They've been pretty damn good. The Golden Griffins have not. Is it too obvious to take Siena here?
Maybe the number's been bet up a little bit, I believe.
Been down,
actually kind of.
It's
been bet down. Wow.
Yeah, surprising.
Yeah,
that's not what I was
down to 7.
I like the under, big time under matchup between these two. It's been like, I think 7 of the last 10 matchups have gone under. And I would think maybe Siena is less motivated to run, coming back from their pretty impressive performance down in Orlando. Mm-hmm. Now they're starting league play. I know Matt has some solid data that sometimes the first league game in December is actually conducive to the over. But I was leaning towards the under with this one. I would just think Siena's slow tempo offensively. Canisius is more execution based on that end. And the stakes of league play hopefully will be lining up for that. But still not my best bet. Staying away from that on this one because Kai, I don't like the MAAC. Betting the MAAC is very difficult for me. I don't know if that's just a me thing, but I have troubles with it.
It's random. It's really random. Any team can beat any team.
They're all the same.
Random.
That's exactly right. It feels like Siena's a bit too high for my liking. They beat Florida State. They beat Seton Hall. They rose 50 spots in KenPom. They're solid. This is the same team, though, that battled with Holy Cross, lost to Army. I'm not ready to call Siena an awesome mid-major team yet. They're solid. But Canisius, Matt, like you said, they've been awful. I can't trust them. In fact, I haven't trusted them for years. They're probably the team I trust least in college basketball. They do have athleticism, though. That can bother Siena. That's probably the biggest kryptonite for Siena, despite those Florida State and Hall wins. Kind of strange. Perhaps that's how Canisius sort of finds an edge here. But down to 7, I can't bet Canisius.
Yeah, 9, I think I would have. 7's just too low. I think Canisius is too proud. The program, I think Witherspoon is solid. His team hasn't been ravaged by injuries as much as it was in prior years, which really doomed their like the COVID crippled them, and then they had a ton of like Malik Green was really banged up, so they've had some bad luck go against them. Made me think they'd be a bounce back candidate this year, but I haven't seen it. My guy Hako Taco Fritz is still coming back from an injury, so his minute count is annoyingly low, but I love him when he's at his best. All that is to say, no play, and it's time for Chat Mob round 2. Jimbo, lead us.
Got you for it. Yep. From Harry R, we got a twofer. I'll go to Matt first here. Charleston Southern at South Florida. And South Florida is a favorite. Is there any chance we can trust them? Charleston Southern's actually been a little bit better this year than the last couple of years. Yeah.
No, we can't though, Jim. We cannot trust South Florida under any circumstances.
All right,
absolutely
fair.
not.
That was a favorite. Kai, Eastern Kentucky at James Madison, also from Harry. I read that James Madison had a little bit of a flu, and that might have contributed to the poor Valpo effort that frustrated the heck out of us. They should get a debut from Tyree Iheanacho, the former Summit Freshman of the Year at North Dakota. Adds a little more playmaking juice. I kind of like James Madison here. I took it small. It's going to be a really high possession game. Eastern Kentucky likes to run. So am I crazy, or are we just off the JMU bandwagon after that last game?
I'm not off the bandwagon. I hate flu season. There's so many unexpected guys out. It makes betting very frustrating. No, I'm still on it. I think EKU is in trouble if they try to run, and they're going to. I think they've played slower opponents because it's kind of kept their tempo down a little bit. Hamilton wants to run. That is what he wants to do. He literally advertises it for their team. For their program.
It's like a billboard. Yeah, it is.
The over is the obvious play, and it's gotten hammered. So I don't know if I can recommend it at this current.
I might still do it. Why not? 158. These teams are going to sail over 160, won't they?
They should.
Yeah. You like to see your old 90 to 85 kind of game, and
right, just something just ridiculous, right? Like the FIU NC State game or something.
Yep. Matt, next.
Oh, sorry, Jim. Real quick. Oh, Kai, can I bring up the flu point? Anyone has any flu intel, you should DM us because it's impossible to find information. If you have it, we need to know about it. Do not share it in the chat forum. DM us privately. Thank you.
You know someone with the flu. Just give us a scoop. Matt, Florida A&M at Georgia from Josh Benedict. Florida A&M is terrible. But do we trust Georgia covering a big spread? They've had some absences. Moncrief missed last game. What do you think?
I don't know. I just can't get involved in any game with Florida A&M because they are so bad, but because the prices reflect how bad they are at this point. So it's just like you're betting into a complete random crapshoot dart throwing contest if you're betting Florida A&M games.
Yeah, I wanted to back Georgia, but the injury stuff gave me too much hesitation. And I also am a little bit scarred from backing Mike White as a big dog at Florida, or a big favorite. He just never really it had some tendencies to not quite blow teams out. Mm-hmm. Kai, I hope you're not too bitter about one of these teams, but from Georgia Lowe, Towson is headed to LIU.
Man,
I think LIU is awful. They're down to like 7 scholarship players. St. John's just played with their food a little bit down the stretch. I don't think Towson will. I think Towson smashes them.
I tend to think so too, Jim, but I'm 0-2 betting against LIU. So I'm done. I mean, they are getting blown out every game. The teams just kind of give up at the end. The better team put the walk-ons in. Weird stuff happens. A lot of variance in high spread games. So you got to be careful when you're betting games over 20, 30, because a lot of weird stuff can happen at the end of games. So I'm staying away.
Maybe Towson first half.
I
think they could be all over him here.
Yeah.
And I think they've taken money. So current price is a little dicier, but first half, I think you're probably in good shape with that one. Matt, we got an in-state rivalry up in Rhode Island. Bryant at Brown.
Bryant by a lot of points. I think they smack him. I really do. I know Brown's been fine, I guess. A couple injury concerns. I just think they don't match up well with Bryant. I think you need to play like a true Ivy type of, more mix and match defenses, more, I think, complexity to really thwart Bryant. And Brown's more of a non-Ivy type of Ivy team.
Yeah, Brown is willing to run, and you're just playing into Bryant's hands. And that's at Bryant, by the way. I misspoke. That is in Smithfield.
Hey, I'll be there. I'll be in Smithfield in 24 hours. How about that, guys?
Is that at Bryant? I thought it was at Brown.
Actually, I'll be just outside Smithfield.
Per Mr. Ken Pomeroy, it is.
It's 20 minutes away.
Bryant.
Okay.
I had
20
that,
minutes away.
Not big trouble.
I had that reversed. How about
there
that?
Go. We're all learning on the show here. That's good. We're people helping people. Another question in the chat was Colgate at Auburn. And you know what? I'm just going to expose myself in a legal way here and give my best bet. Auburn -13. They are a rockin' home team. And I think Colgate, as good and as well coached as they are, they really struggle with athleticism. Auburn's going to wear you down with pressure over the course of the game. Maybe this isn't a home run right away. But I think by the end of the second half, by midway through the second half, we start to see the fork happen. We start to see the athleticism where I think back to that Colgate game in the NCAA tournament against Arkansas as a neutral floor against an SEC team that they just ran out of steam completely. I think on the road in the jungle, we see that effect amplified. So Auburn -13 is my best bet. Let's see. Anything else in the chat that I missed? We've hit App State Charlotte. We've hit Campbell ECU.
Idaho, Northern Illinois. Let's get a main board take.
God.
I know, right? What a dumb. Who called who to schedule this game? Let's go to Idaho.
I think
Let's go
Idaho's in a great spot
Western
here.
Chicago. Yeah, I agree.
Northern Illinois just played Eastern Illinois 48 hours ago, had a big win. Now they have to go to Idaho, and then they're off for 10 days for finals. That's a really weird schedule spot. I could see them kind of thrown in the towel. But Idaho's got injuries. Kai, you noted Mr. Frank might not be playing.
Yep, he's out probably.
So that's dampens my enthusiasm for it, but I do love the spot for Idaho. All right. I believe that is it for the chat. Pat Taylor says he desperately needs an under. Pat, I am ice cold on totals. You don't want an under from me. So I'm just going to.
It's not a good time to bet unders right now. It's not an unders. Yeah. Not an under market right now.
Last 3 days, three of the most efficient 4 days of the season. It's skyrocketing. So unders are really tough to find.
It must be that post-Thanksgiving no defense hangover, potentially. Hey, it's time for best bets, and we haven't talked about mine, so I'm going to lead us off here. It's a pretty simple fade of large home favorite LSU. Taking UT Arlington, the Mavs making the not-so-far trip there over to the Bayou. LSU, look at what they've done at home as like substantial home favorites. Their only game they've looked dominant was against Illinois State. Illinois State is one of the 5 worst ATS teams, cover margin outright in the country so far. Probably should have lost to Wofford. Played with what UMKC closed, played with their food against, who was their first game? I'm already blanking. They're not a good large favorite. This team's not that talented. Way too many points. Take UTA. UMKC. That's right. Yeah, take UTA. Plus 19. What's that right now?
Yeah, 19.
19? Yeah. Boom. Kai.
Yeah, I like your lean there, Matt. That spread has not moved an inch. I'm curious.
I don't get that.
Yeah,
I don't understand. People like LSU in this.
The one game they covered as a big favorite was against New Orleans. I was on New Orleans.
Oh yeah, they actually have 2. And New Orleans sucks too. Yeah, they've gotten lucky with those teams. They're not good.
Arlington's offense is one of the worst in the country.
It's not good either.
I'm a little bit worried about that. Like they score like 36 points in this game, but good luck, Matthew.
Thank you.
Maryland -1.5 was my best bet. Big Ten home. Terps are legit. Illinois young. First road game. That's the gist. Jim.
There you go. Yep. Mine was Auburn -13. Big athleticism edge over Colgate. I think that wears them down over the course of the game. Bruce Pearl's teams have been remarkable. ATS at home last year was an outlier awesome, but it's been a pretty consistent trend for them in the jungle. I think that environment feeds Wendell Green and Katie Johnson quite a bit. So I will take the Tigers at home against a very competent Colgate squad.
Love it. Well, that wraps it up. Boys and girls, thank you for tuning in on this Friday special edition. Again, we are off tomorrow. I'm sorry. I'm actually not sorry. I'm excited to watch the US of A.
Don't be sorry.
And the knockout stages, baby. So make sure you take the time you had already set aside to watch this program. put on some red, blue, and white and be patriotic for a day.
Yeah, get your bets in
see,
by 9 a.m. Eastern and
Bright
get
and early.
watching the game at 10 a.m. Eastern.
But don't hit the overnights, please. Don't do that. Help us out. Don't hit the overnights. That's not nice. We'll see you guys Monday. I believe we're back Monday at the usual time. We'll get back into a nice little regularly scheduled cadence for next week. Until then,